For the adults, last year I had the opportunity to dine at one of those very fine, upscale restaurants, and it was amazing. And if you asked me to tell you the long story about it, interesting to maybe, I would not choose to tell you about the incredible view from the top of the hotel, the restaurant there where I was sitting. And I wouldn't tell you about the wait staff, who were also terrific. I'd want to talk to you about the food. Every bite of that meal, from the salad down to the cheese course at the end, was just so full of flavor. Every bite, I'm looking at things on the plate. I have no earthly idea what they are, but somehow it all blended together beautifully. And so I really enjoyed that meal. But the reason I realized that the meal was so outstanding, that it is stuck in my mind after all these months, is the fact that it's so much different than what I normally eat. I manage okay in a kitchen by myself, but I cannot cook like this chef was able to do. And none of the places that I go to eat locally, nobody's at the level of this chef. And so that's why that meal stood out. I'm not exaggerating if I tell you that was probably the best meal I had in maybe a decade, maybe 20 years. And if you can understand that you need a difference for something to stand out, you'll appreciate a little better Jesus' light and dark analogy. Everybody knows dark is dark, light is light, they're not even close, and so that difference is quite stark. And Jesus says to us, oh, you and I, the disciples, we can be light in a dark world. Good example of that is truth. Some of you may remember hearing the expression, the light of truth. It's a wonderful illustration of this. When people lie, they create darkness, because you never know what's going on. They're lying to you. You don't know what the real story is, and it's hard to navigate through that. But if truth is told, then there's light coming into the situation. And Jesus thinks that you and I can do that. But sadly, we don't always do that. In some cases, it's kind of like the point I was trying to make with the kids. We basically hide it. The teenagers, maybe those of you that are still working, especially the teens, you would not be the first person that was living a bit of a double life. You come to church and you're a disciple of Christ, and you do a lot of things along those lines. It's terrific. But then you go to school, and at school, you basically hide your faith. You hide the fact that you're trying to be a disciple of Christ, because you have a need, maybe, to fit in. And your friends aren't going to really, you think, honor that you are trying to live out the faith. And so you hide it. See it too, again, in workplaces. People gather around the proverbial water cooler to talk, and gossip goes on, or they talk about something that everybody's watching. And you know that you have no business watching this thing, because it's not, as St. Paul would say, wonderful and beautiful and uplifting. But you feel like, well, I got to go watch this thing so I can fit in to the office conversation. Or the gossip is go on. You didn't start it, but somebody else did. And you just aren't willing to put light into the situation. You're not willing to say, hey, maybe in fairness to the person we're talking about, have we considered this? We just sort of jump into the gossip. And Jesus wants us to do better. But there is something else that might be at work here, something that the prophet Isaiah wrote about long ago. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who change darkness into light and light into darkness. It's an interesting thing to think about. There are, of course, a whole lot of people in our society, unbelievers, perhaps even Christians, who will look around at what's going on in society and say, oh, it's perfectly fine. It is light. There's no darkness. And so I don't need to be light in a dark world because the world is perfectly fine. You'd appreciate that's tricky, because if you find yourself thinking that, if you find yourself listening to, our leadership and listening to them talk, and you think, oh, yeah, what they're talking about, oh, yeah, no, that's fine. The fact that there is injustice in it, say, oh, no, that's fine, because there's a practical reason why this stuff needs to be done. If it is a question of two countries at war, there's a tendency to look at that and pick sides and say, oh, well, no, it's fine because this side was wronged and they get to do whatever they're doing. And in doing those, thinking those kind of things, we take darkness. War is a terrible thing. It is always a terrible thing. But we take it and somehow we turn it into, oh, no, in this case, it's perfectly wonderful and fine. And if we do that, we'll never be light in a dark world because we don't even think we need to do it. I encourage you to give this some thought on two levels. For some of us, maybe just the first point, Jesus, just asking ourselves, hey, in what way can I be light in a dark world? It's a relatively straightforward question, the one I asked the kids, just asking yourself, well, tomorrow, the next day, this week, at work or at school, what can I do just to make things a little better? Not worrying about the fact that what little bit can I do? Do your little bit. Shine your light. But for some of us who are a little farther along in our spiritual life, you might want to take a look at this passage of Isaiah and ask yourself, is there some part of my life that I'm thinking is perfectly okay? There's lots of light in it, when in truth, it's all darkness. In which case, perhaps we need to ask for the light of truth, God's light, to come into that situation. Because if God can illuminate that for us, perhaps then we can illuminate it for other people.